Hello, my name is Brian Lee, and I have a presentation today about drone use in agriculture. I am with the University of Wyoming Extension, located at the SARIC Research and Extension Center. And this presentation today hopefully will help you understand what your rights are as a drone operator and also how to not get in trouble, basically, because we all want to be safe and responsible if we are going to be using drones. I assume you know in general what drones can be used for. They're becoming increasingly more popular in our world. They're also becoming more inexpensive and also technologically advanced, making them more useful to people. And so I have a few tips on what you need to do, the bare minimum to make sure that you are doing everything correctly and that you're being responsible. First of all, every drone must be registered. The FAA does this so they know who is flying where, make sure you're not doing anything you shouldn't. Also, who to contact if somebody finds a drone somewhere. So register your drone, and I've got the website stated there. Another thing that a lot of people might not be comfortable with, but maybe should do, is look at an aviation map. I know this can be intimidating. You say, I don't even know where I can find one of those at. Go on the FAA website and look around. This will help you understand different airspaces, where airports are, where towers are, where you can fly and where you cannot fly. Another thing that you must do all the time is fly under 400 feet. I know that might seem like a long ways up, but when you get in the air and the drone's really going, 400 feet can come pretty quickly. Another thing that you have to do is fly within line of sight of your drone. This is for safety. It's to reduce accidents. There is a way that you can have a secondary pilot who you are in contact with that can keep an eye on the drone, even if you cannot see it. If they are in contact with you, you're still legal. And another thing that is important that where people typically get into issues with are privacy. Respect people's privacy. Don't use drones for anything other than their purpose. And if you do plan on, or there's a chance that you might be over some private property, it's a good idea to get a hold of that landowner, let them know that you're going to be out doing that so that there isn't an issue with privacy being violated. The whole premise of this presentation is to help you understand how to protect yourself. Nobody wants to be in trouble with the FAA or have somebody come after them or you're being liable for something. So here are some times and places where you should never fly. Never fly near other aircraft, or especially near airports, and the rule is 5 miles. If you are flying somewhere and another aircraft enters the area, you must give way. Never fly over groups of people. Drones can, even though they only weigh a couple pounds, if you lose contact with your drone and it falls from the sky, it has rotors that are spinning at a high rate of speed and can potentially hurt somebody. You don't want to be liable for somebody's injury or damaged property. Never fly near emergencies such as fires. Firefighters are out attempting to save lives and property. Don't get in the middle of that because you want to get a cool picture. It's not worth it. And also another place that people tend to think it's okay to fly is national parks. It is not. This is highly illegal. National parks are there to protect wildlife and also nature, and let it be that way. You don't want to get a bill from the FAA or a fine from the FAA for flying in a place that you're not supposed to. You should never fly under the influence of drugs or alcohol. A rule is 8 hours from bottle to throttle. Kind of a catchy saying. We don't tend to make good decisions when somebody is under the influence, and flying is no time to experiment with that. So just don't do it. Another thing to think about, especially in Wyoming, is it's tough to fly when it's windy. It's windy a lot in Wyoming. Find a time when you can fly safely and not get into a bad situation. Typically, first thing in the morning is a good time to fly, so take advantage of one of those times.
There are a few options for you to legally fly your drone in the United States. One option designated by FAA is for fee or recreational purposes. You still must register your aircraft as it is over 0.555 pounds. Also must be under 55 pounds. That's a rather large drone, but as technology increases, there might be the possibility for drones carrying larger payloads. For this option, you do not have a remote certification, but you must know kind of some of the basics of drone operation. As we just discussed, don't fly within 5 miles of an airport. You must also keep line of sight or have a spotter drone, so you know and have your eyes on that drone at all times. You must also not fly at night or after civil twilight. And civil twilight, don't worry, I had to look it up too. That is described as a period after sunset or before sunrise, ending or beginning when the sun is about 6 degrees below the horizon and enough light for ordinary outdoor occupations. So if you know what 6 degrees below the horizon looks like, maybe don't fly. Think about typical hunting light, roughly the same time period.
The first option to flying legally is to fly under a hobby or recreation designation. You still must register your aircraft if it is over 0.55 pounds, and the website is there. You can see the drone also must be under 55 pounds, and that would be an extremely large drone, but as technology increases, there's certainly the possibility of getting a drone that big. You do not need a remote pilot certification, which is the pilot license essentially for flying a drone. And you still have to follow the rules. Don't fly within 5 miles of an airport. You have to keep line of sight of the drone or have a spotter like we talked about. You can have a spotter go out further away that is able to keep an eye on the drone and keep in radio contact with you. Do not fly at night or after civil twilight. I had to look this up, don't worry. With civil twilight is described as the period after sunset or before sunrise, ending or beginning when the sun is about 6 degrees below the horizon and enough light for ordinary outdoor occupations. The second option for flying legally is to go ahead and get a remote pilot certification and fly your drone for commercial use. So commercial use is designated as anything that is done for a job or for financial gain. So if you are taking photos for a realtor, that technically is commercial use. You still must register your aircraft as always and re-register every 3 years with that website there, and it must be under 55 pounds in weight. You will need to get a remote pilot certification from the FAA, which is that pilot's license, and it needs to be renewed every 2 years. You also must report lost drones or any wrecks to the FAA. They review it just like larger airplanes. So the pilot's license is an FAA license, and it has all the requirements and important details that go with it. If you do get your remote pilot certification and there is a situation where you need an exemption to fly where we typically cannot, there are ways to do that. These following options are all subject to an FAA waiver. So for commercial use, there are situations where you can fly outside of line of sight with an FAA waiver for a certain purpose. You can fly closer to aircraft, airports, or people with an FAA waiver for certain situations. You can potentially fly in controlled airspace and also during nighttime if need be. These are special situations that they review on a case-to-case basis. They probably won't give waivers to all of them depending on what is going on or what you're specifically asking for. But the process to do this is actually not too bad. It's all done online now and they can get through them pretty quickly. The process for taking the remote pilot certification test is fairly straightforward. Again, you only need this if you're planning on using your drone commercially. Testing centers in our area are Cody, Casper, Cheyenne, and Sidney, Nebraska. You can go and it's all online. There are online resources from the FAA that you study and will help you attempt to pass the test. This needs to be renewed every 2 years at a cost of $150. So again, commercially, if you're planning on using your drone, so anytime basically that you're using this for your work or for any type of financial gain, you should get the remote pilot certification. There are a few other resources that are worth noting that are useful, especially for commercial use, but also for hobby or recreational use. A thing called NOTAMs, which is Notice to All Airmen. It is a resource put out by the FAA that designates any special exemptions for certain areas. So say there is an air show going on at an airport in Cheyenne, or there is a special flight that is taking place over your area, or a weather occurrence that you need to be aware of. These will all be on a NOTAMs notice, and that is a good thing to check out if you're planning on flying in a certain area. There's an app that the FAA has developed to try to help protect drone operators. It's called Before You Fly. It's a mobile app. You can log on before you fly and it will tell you if you're in a restricted area, if you're within 5 miles of an airport, if there's a weather issue, if there are other things going on in your area. It's good to check out. Another thing that I think is important to do, and I've mentioned this before, is to ask people around you, ask neighbors if it's okay if you fly, especially if there's a chance you'll be over private land, especially if it's a windy day or you're checking something out. And then another thing that you should really, it's important to remember, if you're planning on flying at nighttime or close to an airport, make sure you try to get an FAA waiver. So don't take the chance with being somewhere where you're not supposed to be. I think it is a very good idea to get the remote pilot certification, and this is one reason why. This is an aeronautical map of the city of Denver, and all these lines, numbers, colors, dots are reasons why. There are a lot of things going on in our world, especially in the aviation world, that we may not even be aware of. And it's important that you try to protect yourself. Obviously, Denver, there's a lot going on, a lot of airports, a lot of towers and tall buildings. But this is just an example of everything that pilots have to check out and know what's going on. So before you go out and send a drone up in downtown Denver, you better make sure to know where you're at. This is another aeronautical map of the Evanston and Kimmer area. Again, this is not downtown Denver, but there are still a lot going on, a lot of things going on in this map. If you'll look, you can see a couple of airports in the area. There are also flight paths that commercial flights take, towers, and other things that we need to be aware of. So even in rural Wyoming, we can't just go fly wherever we want. It's important to know what's going on, so I do recommend taking the remote pilot certification test. There are some operational pitfalls that the FAA outlines as to the reasons why pilots might get into trouble. Um, these are important to be aware of and to understand if you are a drone pilot. The first one is peer pressure. We face peer pressure daily, and this can be especially true if you are working with a landowner or a business or a company, and it's almost the end of the day. They want that one last job done, and you're the drone operator. They say, well, why don't you just do it while you're here? You need to think about what you're doing. Don't fall under peer pressure. This is your drone. This is your potentially your license at stake. So make good decisions. And along with this, make sure you're in a good mindset. You're not taking unnecessary risks. You're prepared to fly that day. One thing that is never good when we're talking machinery or equipment is a get it done quick attitude. They usually will end in risky behavior, unnecessary risk being taken. Don't try to get it done quick. Try to get it done correctly. Don't wreck your drone. And another thing is, it's possible to get behind the aircraft. It's called in the aviation world, where you are reacting to what that airplane or aircraft is doing instead of taking steps ahead and planning. So, if you get behind the aircraft, maybe take a break. If you're able, get out of the sky and try to make good decisions. Situational awareness. Be aware. Look around if there are things going on. If there's weather coming in. If there is another airplane in the area. Be situationally aware. Don't get tunnel vision. And one that can really get drone operators in trouble is not operating with adequate battery. You might be too far out to get back to where you are safely, and you'll have to put the drone down in an area you might not want to. Better safe than sorry. The typical drone battery only lasts somewhere from maybe 15 to 20 minutes, so plan ahead. And then have a plan. Don't try to do too much. Again, these drones can be pretty expensive. You don't want to wreck your drone on an unnecessary risk. I didn't want to talk about drones without talking about data collection and, more importantly, data ownership. This is a topic that is very popular right now, especially in this time in agriculture. We are creating and processing millions of data points daily, whether it's through finance or on our computers or our phones. Whether you know it or not, we're creating data points constantly. And it's one thing that's going to be more important as we go forward, this idea of data ownership. And the Wyoming stock growers are actually well aware of this. They've been working on this in the Wyoming legislature since 2015, an attempt to protect landowners from unlawful or unknown data collection on their properties. And in precision agriculture with precision planters and precision sprayers, the idea of data ownership is important. Who owns the data that is being generated? Is it the equipment manufacturer or is it the landowner? And it can get pretty murky sometimes. So make sure that you have an idea of what's going on and know your rights. And kind of an interesting example is this picture on the right. Naruto took this self-portrait in 2011 with a camera owned by a photographer. This photo has been the subject of a years-long copyright battle that has been recently settled, it appears. So this Naruto, he took this photo on this photographer's camera. The photographer attempted to capitalize on this and profit from this photo because it's a pretty neat photo. So PETA actually filed suit against the photographer, the camera owner, saying that he shouldn't be able to profit off of this photo because this primate took the photo. So this idea of data ownership is at play here, and it was settled that the camera owner would donate any profit back to wildlife preservation. So it was kind of an interesting story. I think as we've gone through this, you've probably found yourself thinking of ways that you might be able to utilize a drone, or you've already figured out a way to utilize a drone. There are a lot of success stories in agriculture. We work in big open areas with these specialized situations, and one that some success stories we've seen are that rancher finding that one lost calf that they couldn't find, or saving time by sending the drone up to figure out where the herd is at in a large paddock. You could possibly locate fence issues with your drone by flying down fence lines, or checking water in that hard to get to tank area that takes you, maybe it's only half a mile away, but it takes you half an hour to get there. You could possibly find a stuck tower on a corn pivot, or a stress spot in a field for various reasons. A few ways the university is utilizing drones. We've been mapping for crop health at the Sarek location. This is kind of a neat graphic on the right here showing plant health across a corn pivot. You can see skips in the planter, you can see the pivot tracks. It's pretty neat. We have a researcher who has been utilizing drones to track invasive species in grass, very successfully actually, but for the protection of the state and private landowners, important to find different ways to track invasive species. So a lot of cool ideas out there. I think this is just the beginning. Drones are only going to get more popular as they become cheaper and also more effective. So that's my presentation. I appreciate your time. If you have any questions, please feel free to get a hold of me, and thank you for listening.